I'm very excited about this conversation with Phyllis, and I would urge you, just please go like this if you'd like us to stop and you want to ask a question. We will on occasion invite you to do that, but should we not do that and you have a burning question you think is very relevant to what's being discussed in the moment, please give us a sign. We're happy to stop and hear what you want to know. So I am Betsy Adams. I am Patsy Whitman's very fortunate spouse, and I'm the one who gets to do this, which is wonderful for me. Phyllis Sinrich, our artist, I think most of you know. We're just thrilled to be able to exhibit her work, finally. And what we're going to do is, the flow in general is that I loft these, softball questions at Phyllis, and she does what she wants with them. But basically, we're going to ask her about her, some personal stuff she would like to share. Then we're going to talk about what the inspiration or process or approach is to her art. And then we're going to talk specifically about...
Excuse me.
No, she's better here.
Then we're going to talk specifically about the Unspoken Power of Mannequins show. At that point, in that last part, we're going to talk about some general things that have to do with the subject matter of this show. About the nexus of fashion and art, and mannequins as a part of that, the role of mannequins. And then at the end, we're going to get a break. We're going to get up, and the walk part will happen. Phyllis is going to start by showing you the first three subjects that grabbed her attention and led to this whole series. And then if anyone wants to know anything, Liz, are you happy?
I'm fine.
Are you?
I don't have a pet right now. This is
Okay,
great.
anyone who is not a dog person, we do understand. We find it somewhat perplexing, but we do understand. And please, just please let me know that you would like to be relieved of Linda's attentions. So, without further ado, Phyllis.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate you sharing what I feel is sharing with me my family of mannequins. One of the things that I have often said or thought to myself as a photographer, which came to me after years and years of having my own business, and after 9/11 when the marketing world collapsed, I said, I have had enough hustling to try and get business. I'm now going to take out all of the hundreds of slides from my closet and do something with them. Photography was always a hobby. But I also feel as if there is some kind of genetic connection, because I have one uncle who was a documentary filmmaker for March of Times. People might remember March of Time. And he was also an editor for Time Life magazine, photography. His brother, my other uncle, was a cinematographer, sort of journalistic photographer for Fox Movie Time, which those of a certain age will remember. That was the way you found your news in the movies. His son is a very famous cinematographer, Owen Roisman, who did The French Connection, Tootsie, Network, and a whole bunch of other films, having been nominated very often for an Oscar. And I have to say, just to carry on the family tradition, my grandson is here today visiting me from college, where he is also studying filmmaking. So there is this wonderful generational thing. On the personal level, I approach my work in what I call the thrill of discovery. I had, as a child, I grew up in Brooklyn, and for some reason, I wanted to be an archaeologist. And didn't quite work out that way. I never did. I then, went on to school, loved writing and loved fashion, graduated from the Fashion Institute of Technology, and went on to, at the point I decided photography was what I wanted to focus on. I think of my camera now almost as if it's a metaphor that allows me to dig anywhere in the world, and I shoot extemporaneously and just, what talks to me. And so I do attempt to create a sense of tension in my work. I shoot real-world images that I morph them into either abstractions, or in the case of the mannequins, these are mannequins. But I look for real mannequins who look like real people. And on the other hand, if you look closely, you will see in almost every one that they're not real. They either have a wrist that's attached or a shoulder that's attached, or their hair is molded. So this is a sense of, is it real or is it illusion? And that's the approach that I take to all of my photography work.
Great. I love it. I didn't even have to ask her a question. Fabulous. It's really a tough job. So, that's wonderful background and really sort of illuminating in terms of taking that and looking again when we're done at each of the pieces in the exhibition. Which takes us, of course, right to this particular exhibition. And when we walk around, we're going to talk about the evolution and what first grabbed you and allow people to sort of ask you about specific pieces if they'd like to. But before that, I mean, you have become a historian and an expert on this notion of the connection between art and fashion and the role of the mannequin in that. And I invite you to dive into that subject anywhere it makes sense to you.
Well,
Somebody else is here.
I have come, and it's become pretty obvious, that fashion has become a very, very significant form of art. I mean, at any given time, anywhere in the world, there are at least a dozen major fashion exhibitions in the top museums in the world. So for me, the concept of what I'm doing really plays into the way I feel about the art world. Fashion is not just a passing fancy. Fashion is a very significant economic factor in terms of museums and if any of you have been to the Met, to the Alexander McQueen exhibit, or more recently to the China exhibit, and there was a period, a little while back, they did an exhibit on Impressionism and art, and I wrote this down because I wanted to get it correctly. In that, this was Impressionism, Fashion, and Modernity, which had beautiful Impressionist paintings along with examples of women, mannequins dressed in the kind of fashions that women wore during the time that the Impressionist painters were in their heyday. There's a quote there from Manet, who says, "The latest fashion is absolutely necessary for painting. it's what matters most, and this is the way other Impressionist artists approached their work. They were very conscious of the fashion trends and the fashions that women wore, and incorporated those in their paintings of landscapes and whatever. Museum of Modern Art had an exhibit of Klaus Oldenburg's paper mache clothing. And this was, the name of it was The Store. So there is this marriage that has been building, and it's been, represented in many, many different places. I have to just interject. I created once I began, when I started photographing the mannequins and began realizing that there was something happening because they all looked human, I began researching the whole subject of mannequins and how important the human form was. And this led me to do a great deal of research, and I have put together a bibliography that's 5 or 6 pages long of books and articles and that talk about all of this, the relationship between art and fashion, and then even more the relationship of mannequins to fashion.
If I can interject just for a second.
Yeah.
We do have copies. Should we run out, if you would simply be sure that I will be able to reach your email that in the sign-in book, and if you put send biblio, I will send it to you via email for anyone that doesn't get a copy today.
But this has created, I feel I've accumulated a vast amount of knowledge, which is really what led to my thesis that mannequins have this unspoken power, because mannequins are avatars for the fashion industry, and the fashion industry itself is an economic engine for and a social and cultural power in most societies. So I have put them together in what I see as a marriage. Fashion and art belong together, and which is what kind of brings me.
It does. There's one thing though that I would like you to talk about, because I think it's just fascinating, and it really is the product of your research. By the way, this bibliography is annotated by Phyllis. It's really wonderful. It's a very impressive little document. You'll learn a lot. I did. One of the things that you've talked to us about, and that you do have articles about, is sort of the recent evolution of mannequins as quite apart from art, but as a social force, if you will, that they've become symbols in other parts of the world for representing a whole other way in which they are being used. And I wondered if you wanted to talk about what you call the religious police.
Well, that's a part of mannequins, which is, as Betsy said, mannequins have, and I'd like to get to that, but preface it by saying, basically the role of a mannequin is to show what the clothing that is for sale in the store looks like. And the more human the mannequin, the more likely people are going to stop and look at what's in the window. And we all bring to that our own personal history. Do we want to be a player in our social set? Do we want to impress other people with what we are wearing? Do we want to use this as a form of power in certain instances. All of these are what the mannequin, so it's a commercial, commercial function. If the mannequin does its job, the woman or the man comes into the store and mission accomplished. Hopefully, once they're in the store, you're going to find what you want and you're going to buy it. So various people have written about how the mannequin is an avatar for a person's self-esteem. You want to look good, you want people to identify you with something that is socially acceptable, all of this, or maybe you have some fantasy of wanting to look like something that you don't yet look like, but that this mannequin's appearance, the attitude, and often just the affect of the mannequin will stimulate some response. All of this is the basic role. And then you've got customs that are culturally driven, such as in Venezuela, a manufacturer of mannequins decided that women in Venezuela were prone to have many surgeries to enhance their beauty and to enhance their physical appearance. And so this manufacturer began making mannequins that had, and I'm quoting, bulging bosoms and other enhancements, because that was the norm that was accepted in Venezuela. And the sales of his mannequins soared. So he obviously tapped into what society wanted. In Sweden, one manufacturer decided that he wanted to make mannequins that looked more like real women. So they were more curvaceous than the size 4 mannequins, which is more common. And he got a great response to this. I mean, it was all over the internet. The mannequins in Sweden looked like real women. That's a big event. So this is all very fascinating. But for me, I think one of the most troubling and touching and amazing developments with mannequins is they are being used to reinforce the religious extremism that that we are all aware of that exists in some societies. And so there are, and I have a book here that I have of the original articles that prompted the bibliography, if anybody's interested. But there's a photograph in there of mannequins in the Uyghur territory of Western China, which is a Muslim community, and the eyes of the mannequins are taped because the reason given was that the eyes are the windows to the soul, and so you cannot have eyes that are visible. These are mannequins. And that in Iraq, they had mannequins that had Western dress, very modern, although from our perspective would be very modest. They had long dresses and covered up, but behind the mannequins was a wall of paper mache flames. And I'm going to quote again. The message was that men who look at women in such dress become voracious monsters. Women who wear them burn through eternity. So this